From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Chris Terrell Podcast. And I am your host, Chris Terrell. And welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? And what failure did you go through? But more importantly, what I'm more interested in is what lesson did you get from that failure? Come on now. Don't let a perfectly good failure go by without you getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 110 pounds myself. 25 pounds, whoop, got that wrong, after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down again, before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired and made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my lifestyle, habits, routines, to my environment, to my community, and to my system of beliefs. And now I'm here each week helping champions like you get the same results in your life. You know, losing weight and keeping it off for how long? Say it with me. Forever. Forever. I don't want you losing weight and putting it back on. That sounds ridiculous. Come on now. We've done that. Many of you done it with me. I've got that t-shirt. I've seen that concert. It's a terrible band. Yo-yo dieting. Ugh. And I hate their hit song. I gained it all back again. A terrible song. Now, I am very excited for this week because, as I've said, in this season, I'm going to be trying new things and I'm going to be experimenting, seeing what works, what doesn't, because that's how you move forward in success. You have to be willing to take actions you've not taken before. You have to be willing to experiment on your life. That's how I lost my weight, by experimentation on myself, experimentation with my choices, experimentation with my lifestyle. One of the things that was instrumental in helping me in every area of life succeed is mentors and coaches. I've talked before about OSPs, only supportive people. I've talked before about the impact to your community. I open each podcast by saying you are a byproduct of your lifestyle, habits, routines, your community, environment, and your system of beliefs. I don't talk a ton directly pointing at system of beliefs. I sort of talk around it, talk about it, but just beliefs as a concept. Well, I had a coach, his name was Todd, who was my mindset coach that I hired a couple of years ago because I really needed to learn and understand some things. I've always had coaches ever since I've been an adult. So I am a big believer in having coaches and mentors in your life. Sometimes they're like bosses and friends and family. Sometimes they're people you pay, like a therapist or a coach. And I invited Todd to come onto my podcast to talk to you all about some of the things that we've gone through together. We have a unique situation that not a lot of people run into. I was his weight loss coach, which led to me using him on the mindset side of things, because as I got to know him, I got to see like, hey, I could actually use some help. And we it was a wonderful, wonderful experience working with him. But I invited him to come on here so that you can learn from some of the people that I've learned from, and in this case, Todd. And we did a 2-hour podcast. So this is going to be a substantially longer episode than normal if you haven't already noticed. I'm here in a second. I'm going to switch over to that, the recording of that session that we did. But I want you to listen in. We're going to go all sorts of different places. We're definitely going to be constantly bringing it back to weight loss and talking about weight loss. But I think you're going to find this conversation enlightening and helpful for many, many aspects of your life. If you've ever been uncertain about what exactly does it mean when we say mindset, you're going to like this podcast because we're going to really crack that open and talk about it. If you've wondered, well, how do beliefs impact your ability to lose weight or to maintain it, you're going to like this episode because we're going to crack that open and talk about it. It's going to get really fun. There near the end, we're going to get a little bit more heady, have a little bit more fun with it. So stay tuned all the way if you're really liking learning about your mind and learning about what makes you work. This is going to be a fun episode. Last thing before I switch over to it, I want to invite you to come join my free Facebook group. You can find a link to that in the show notes or by going to christerrellcoaching.com, and there'll be a link there on the website. And I would also love to invite you to come check out my YouTube channel. You can find a link to that in the show notes, of course, or you can go to YouTube and just type in the Chris Terrell Podcast or Chris Terrell Coaching, and that will show in the results. That'll show the YouTube channel, and I'd love to have you watch that. I go live there every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. taking your questions. I'll usually have a topic to talk about. You can think of it like a bonus podcast. If you're unable to make it live, that's no problem. They are all left available for replay on my YouTube channel. So you'll see a section for live streams. You can go back and watch those. And I would love to invite you to come do that as well. If you're trying to make sure to keep your mindset focused on the task at hand, which is losing weight and keeping it off. Definitely keeping it off. And now, without further ado, I would like to present to you Todd. All right, Todd. So tell everybody, who is Todd? What does Todd do?
That's a real soft intro to me. I thought you'd give me a little more than that to go off of.
I'm going to let you take it wherever you want to take it.
So, you know what? What does Todd do? Todd, let me start here. Todd tries to be better. And that path of trying to be better led me to study family human development in college. I thought I'd go be a marriage and family therapist. I worked with kids and youth in group homes. I later became a career coach working for the state. And every single time I helped someone else become better, I learned a little more about myself. It inevitably led me to the field of mindset. And so what I am now is a mindset coach. And it started with my own journey. I had to hire my own coach because I was in a situation that was really dire. My wife was diagnosed with a brain tumor in about 2015 and had to have it removed. Now, I'm a family man. We were married for a long time. We got married in 2001. We had 3 kids. And I was in a place where I was unhealthy, weighing 300 pounds. My wife and I were in marriage and family therapy. Things were not going right. I had 3 little kids. I was earning $35,000 a year, and my wife was disabled. And it made me go, oh my gosh, I'm really close to losing everything. I hired a coach. I learned about the power of mindset, the idea that we become what we think about. And my whole life started to change. I quit my job, started working for myself as a career coach, and my success in helping people get better jobs that multiplied their salary 2, 3, 4 times the amount of money they've ever earned before was because I was subtly teaching them the art of mindset and how to change what they think about themselves. I decided that that's the path that I wanted to coach full time. I became trained and certified by Bob Proctor. If any of you guys have ever heard of The Secret or seen The Secret, he's the white-haired guy with glasses in there. He was my mentor, and I started coaching for him. I became one of his top coaches in the world in 2021, and I have my own practice with my own clients, helping people reach unbelievable goals. And so that's what I do, and I'm always first and foremost focused on me. How do I become better? And that's actually how I met you, because TikTok is the thing that made me.
Right.
And TikTok, you showed up on my TikTok feed, and I was looking for better ways to improve my health. I had started at 300 pounds. I had lost all the way to 208. And then during the pandemic, I gained the COVID-19, and it didn't stop gaining. And I needed to improve myself. And I think one of the first videos I saw of yours, Chris, was the day that you hit your goal weight. And your video
that one.
I did it. Like, I don't know what it was. I did it. Today's the day. I stepped on my scale and I hit it. And I get emotional just thinking about it, man, because something in that video like hit me, and I hit follow. And the next video I saw was, this was one of my go-to breakfasts on my journey to my health goals. And you pulled into a McDonald's and you ordered an Egg McMuffin. I went, what? This guy lost 125 pounds eating Egg McMuffin? He knows something I don't know. And that's how I started working with you.
And so for everybody listening, to make this fun, so I ended up, through Todd getting to come to for me to help him with the weight loss. Well, I started learning what Todd did, and simultaneously, I was dealing with some real limiting mindsets on some areas that were holding me back. With areas like a big one for me. Y'all, I run a business, so just being transparent about it. I have to sell, and I've never sold me. I'd only ever sold a company's services, and it felt really different to me. And I really struggled with it. And there were several other things. And so I started working with Todd and going through Todd's program, because I'm a big believer you got to have mentors and coaches in life. And I like learning from people that are already doing what I want to be doing, and they're doing it at a higher level. And I was just starting my coaching practice. I was just starting to take on clients, and I had made the leap and went in full time, left my job, and just burned all the bridges behind me, so to speak, and went all in on it. But, learning, I knew how to help people lose weight. I didn't know how to make a business around it. I didn't know how to deliver the service. I didn't know how to manage it with a whole bunch of people. I didn't know what kind of mentality shifts I needed to go through. Like, I was just the learning curve. I felt very much the same way I felt on the beginning of my weight loss journey, where I realized I'm going to do this. Like, I've made the committed decision. I'm going to do this. I just have no idea how. I have no idea how long. I have no idea what's going to be required. I just know I'm never going to give up, and let's see where this journey goes. And it took me so many different places. And with the business, I realized it's the same journey. Just instead of losing weight, I'm trying to build a successful business. I'm trying to build a podcast. I'm trying to get my TikTok working, my social media machine working. And going through Todd's programs really helped me in that area. So it was really fun as we've gotten to know each other. So what's it been 2 years we've known each other now?
It's been 2 years. Unbelievably. Yeah. A little more than that, because I think it was right after Christmas 2 years ago. So it was like early January when we had first started. So we're a little over 2 years.
It was the first Christmas when I started doing this full time. That was 2021. Okay. Wow. So
Absolutely.
I haven't sat down and kind of did the math there. But I wanted to have Todd come on the podcast. We were talking about some other stuff, and it's like, man, I'd love to have you get on the podcast. And here's why, everybody. Now, for those of you in the guild, we just did some lessons talking about modeling, and I was explaining the difference in there between modeling and mimicking. Now, you'll have to go in the guild if you want to get the full lesson, but to basically kind of break apart the two differences between modeling versus mimicking, for those of you that don't know, mimicking is just copying the actions of another, just doing what they do. But you have no concept, no understanding of what they do, no understanding of why they do it. You don't know their thoughts. You don't know their beliefs. You don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes. You just see the doings and you start copying them. You're acting as if. All well and good, but not modeling. Modeling, will involve all of mimicking plus getting to know why they do what they do, getting to understand, but I think more importantly, their beliefs, and understanding their mentality that they bring to the act of whatever it is they're doing that you would like to have. And one of the key parts of that I always do is when I find a model is let me find what books they're reading, let me find what things they watch, what things they listen to, and who are their mentors, and go back another layer. Because a mentor is just going to teach you things that they learned from somebody else. And it's good to hear it, but also go to their sources and hear it from them too. So I wanted to have Todd come on because many of you here, you're modeling me in hopes of getting the same results with your body that I got. Well, if you're just mimicking me, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work because what I did was too personalized for my life. You got to personalize it, but you can model me by learning why I did what I did. And some parts of this come into learning from the same people I learned from. And Todd would be someone that in my long line behind me of mentors that I've had over the years, Todd is for a mindset coach for me was probably below my dad, right there, right below. Like I learned more from my year of working with Todd than I think I learned from anybody else directly. I picked up stuff from other people, sure, but I worked in his program. It was over a year, a year.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half-ish. Yeah, absolutely. It was about a year and a half.
I worked with him one-on-one, and then I worked in your group programs. But the reason why I'm here because I wanted to ask Todd some questions. I want you to you like some of the stuff I talk about. Well, let me share with you some of where I learned it from. So, Todd, I got a question for you.
Well, before you even get to the question, I have to. So I can tell you've grown already in the last. It hasn't even been a year. I think it was over this summer when you said, "Hey, I got to get busy implementing." And focusing on that. And he said, I'd be back whenever. But I can tell you've grown a lot because I remember our conversation. You were resistant to working with me because I think in our initial conversations, you really wanted to know the mechanics of how you run a business. And I said, mechanics don't matter. Your mindset is what matters. And you're like, but how? Like the strategy, the tactics, like I want to guarantee that this is going to improve my business and I'm going to get X results. And I said, you will, but I need you to understand.
Wait, before we go any further, Todd, I want to translate this to those listening because some of you might be like, I don't know why I need to know this. So y'all, think of you coming to a weight loss coach saying, what do I need to eat to lose weight? Tell me the specific doings that I need to go do it. I'm like, man. So anyway, it's funny. I knew that. And yet I'm being the way I'm being. So sorry, continue.
But you were stubborn. You were stubborn with it, which I think all stubborn. People, when they come to change, you have an assumption of what needs to change. And that assumption is ill-informed, ultimately. but you assume you need one thing and you're asking for that one thing. And I didn't want to compromise myself knowing what got my results. I didn't want to compromise and just placate you just to close the sale or whatever. Like, oh my gosh, no. If we're going to do this together, especially for the high ticket that I was charging at the time, you have to understand it is mindset first. The strategy, the tactics, the how comes later. And I remember I was sitting in the parking lot after a breakfast. You're like, Todd, I don't know why you just won't say this is what you'll give me. I said, I am, but you're not hearing me. And so I think it's funny how we all come to change with blocks and assumptions about what we need and what we want, when really we need to come with a blank slate and be open to be curious, not judgmental, right? From Ted Lasso, be curious about what can I learn and how is it going to help me move forward. And I think it comes down to a basic misunderstanding of what mindset is, which I'm sure we'll get into. But you had a question for me.
But a little about my side of that story that you're talking about to kind of fill in the background, because a lot in my head has shifted since then. So to add the color to it, I was trying to start this business and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm so scared of making a mistake. I'm so scared of backsliding. I'm so scared of killing my business before it even got off the ground, because I've had many friends. My father was an entrepreneur, so I'm a second generation entrepreneur. All his friends were entrepreneurs. I've been hanging around him my whole life. And you know what I've learned? Oh, it's easy to kill a company. I've seen him do it. I've watched it. It's so easy to do. And I was terrified of that. I was letting fear rule me, honestly. But when talking with Todd, I was wanting to get these mechanics of what to do. And again, it's so funny. I knew in the moment that me building my business is just like losing weight. It's the same journey, just instead of losing weight and building a business. But all the stuff inside the process is similar. And I remember I've had clients. I've had many clients that'll do this. They'll come to me after, like, I'll meet with them their first week. They'll come back to me the second week and be like, Chris, I did all these things. I'm like, I only asked you to do one thing and you did 6. And I'll say, like, why did you do more? Oh, I want to be a good student. I'm like, but I didn't ask you to do any of those things. Like, why are you doing things I'm not asking you to do? Like, you came here for me to give you the answers. You came for me to help you find the answers. And you're just going off on, you're not even talking to me. And what I realized is I was doing the same thing very much with you. Is I was doing the how, or looking for the how. But really what it was is I just couldn't understand your answer because I didn't have enough knowledge to understand what you were telling me.
And do you remember what started creating that understanding? What got through it is I said, Chris, I don't think you know how you got the results that you got with weight loss, but I do.
And that was a big deal for me that you said that. Yeah. Because the thing that made me finally do it is you said, I'm going to teach you how you did what you did. And it was so important. And y'all, this is why I really wanted Todd to come on here. I knew mechanically how I lost weight. Like, I knew I counted calories, I did these movements, I did this with my food. But what I didn't understand was all the stuff I didn't know. I've learned about a term since losing my weight, unconsciously competent. I was consciously competent in a lot of things, but I was unconsciously competent in so many others. And working on my mindset and working with a good mentor, in this case it was Todd, it helped me fill in the gaps of my understanding. And I was be able to look to my past to be like, oh, that thing I did that I didn't think was important at all turns out is incredibly important. And here's why it's important. And in fact, I need to duplicate it because I just got lucky that I did it that way. And it really, really helped me begin to get results with others, filling in this gap in my understanding.
That's the key. That's the key. And it's not that you were lucky. You had, from all the conversations we've had about your dad, and I know you talked about him a lot in your podcast, you talk him a lot in the guild as well. You were set up to succeed by him with the lessons that he taught you, the lessons that you took into your heart that were just a part of your belief system, your operating system, the way that you thought about things. You think very differently than the majority of people that I even work with. So that was a level of competence, but you were not aware of it. You were that unconscious competent. And part of understanding how you got the result that you had with weight was going to transition not only to growing your business and reaching more people, but in helping people facilitate their own journey. Right. And so I would also say, so when we were first meeting, you were doing mostly 1-to-1 and you were exhausted after that first year. And your business model pivoted and changed in the middle of our coaching engagement. So you have, like, how many members do you have in the guild now?
Oh, we it fluctuates a little bit, but yeah, we're dealing with, now we're serving 500 people. I mean, yeah, I
And
was
before,
struggling to serve 20 before.
yeah, 2 years ago, 20 before. So, boy, I guess maybe I need to pat myself on the back a little bit, for all of you that are in the guild, for all of you listening, there is a big reason why Chris is able to serve you the way that he is in such a remarkable way. And that's because he learned to think differently based on principles rather than just mechanics. And it's the
Right.
same is going to be true in your weight loss journey or if you want to start a business or anything like that. And that's the other part of this piece too. And it'll be interesting to see where our relationship goes and our collaboration, because once you get your health under control, once you reach that weight loss goal and you realize the power of what's inside of you that's been untapped, then you start asking, what's next? Well, there's always a
Right.
what's next. In fact, do you have
I
don't you have
do.
a
I
tattoo? What's
tattooed
next?
that literally on my inside of my arm. What's next?
So
Well,
you had a
and
question.
yeah.
You had a question.
Yeah,
You were
so
going to give me a question.
something I wanted to ask Todd here on the podcast. So it's cold. I mean, and let me do a little bit of a preamble here. One of the things that I discovered with weight loss, with my own journey, was for as long as I believed I couldn't do it, I never did. The moment I began to believe I could do it, even though I didn't know how, things started changing. It ultimately led to me doing it. I completely firmly believe that my belief in the possibility of my success was a mission critical shift. Like, I made it in the very beginning. I don't think you have to make it in the beginning, but somewhere along the line, you have to make the decision, I believe I can do this, and I'm not going to quit until I get there. So there's an endurance component that you pair it with. But that belief is so important. But when I look back to myself before, I refer to as my old self, I had all these beliefs and assumptions about who I was, about how the world is, about how weight gain works, how it doesn't work. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you, Todd, is what is a belief and where do they come from?
And it's a great question. And I want to even preamble just a little bit in that and say that most people aren't asking those questions. Most people are just operating on what they believe or accept as true. And so they don't even have the ability to even analyze a belief system. Some of the first questions in my program are, do you have sound reasons for what you believe? I just was working with a new client who says, man, I don't even know what I believe. I think that's where most of us are. Look, a belief, very simply, is an idea that you've accepted as true, whether you have proof of it or not. What do you think of that as an answer?
So say it one more time. I want to deeply listen.
Belief is an idea that you have accepted as true, whether it is or not.
Okay. Yes. A way I say something is what the mind believes to be true is true as far as that mind is concerned. And so I think maybe sometimes we would call them assumptions. And so if I'm kind of regurgitating back through my wording, how I'm hearing you say this, many of us, we're aware we have assumptions and we have things that we believe are facts, but many of the things that we believe are facts are actually also assumptions.
Correct.
But we just call them beliefs. This is what I believe to be true. Like, I believe your name is Todd. That's because you told me your name is Todd.
And where does my name come from? Where do our beliefs came from? A large amount of our beliefs come from our parents or the environment in which we were raised. Todd I am not Todd. I am greater than that. I'm a spiritual being, an energetic being that's far greater. And I'm not talking about any sort of religious dogma. My consciousness is greater than my body because I have the ability to think about my body. I have the ability to think about what I'm thinking about. So I have to be something more than my name and something more than my body. But I told you my name was Todd because my parents told me my name was Todd. So
Right.
these beliefs, these ideas that we accept as true, we learn them from other people around us. People are always talking. Everything that they're saying, what we're saying right here is just verbalizing an idea. Well, we grow up in an environment where we have ideas flying around all of the time. Some of them, I mean, some of it is religious dogma. That's something we could talk about forever about. Some of it is ideas about what you can and can't do, what's good, what's bad, what's wrong, what's right. These are all ideas. And we have those messages that we're bombarded with, especially through our youth, through our childhood. And we don't know whether they're true or false. We just accept them because the people we are closest to, who we are around the most, whether they're good parents, bad parents, you can trust them, they keep you safe or they don't. We're surrounded by those people, we're familiar with them, and we just naturally trust and accept. This is how children believe in Santa Claus, because someone told them. And that belief, that love, like when my kids found out, my oldest, when he found out that there was no Santa Claus, he cried. And I told him, I said, that's because the love that you felt, that you received, that you gave was real. Doesn't matter whether the belief in Santa Claus is true or not.
You know,
Your
I got to be
experience
honest.
was real.
I've used this Santa Claus analogy to talk about beliefs before, and it has seriously made me reconsider. This is not meant to be a commentary on this. It's just a little fun thought thing I do, but it's like, it has seriously made me reconsider. Isn't it kind of cruel with Santa Claus? Like, because you got to break that illusion at some point to them. And for some, like, to me, it didn't shatter me at all. But like other kids, like you talked about yours, it's like, wow, because I've had that is a tectonic belief shift for a human. And we don't,
Totally.
people don't go through a lot of tectonic belief shifts once they reach adulthood.
No.
And that doesn't mean they can't. I've gone through them, but
How that works is it's also hardwired into our neurology and our biology. You know, when we are born, we are completely in a subconscious state of mind. I mean, we can talk about brainwaves and go into the science. I'm not going to do that here, but you're in a subconscious brainwave. It's called theta wave. So I guess I am going there. Your conscious mind doesn't really start to emerge until 7 or 8. And you're still floating between these brainwave states. Well, your subconscious mind is absorbing everything going around. Your conscious mind really starts to take over and take the driver's seat around 12 years old. You know, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older. And I think trauma and whatever's happening in our environment kind of controls how our brain responds. But your brain is a sponge, soaking up ideas, building your identity, adopting beliefs from outside of you. And let's be honest, people believe some crazy stuff out there. And then
a lot of people think the world's flat.
well, I was going to go there. I mean, honestly,
Let's go there.
well, let's talk about it, because I think it actually plays into so if you're listening and you have a body image struggle, if you have a weight struggle, if you have a health challenge, it's likely you believe something about yourself that's creating that results. Now, let's just talk about flat Earth for a second. Flat Earth is an idea. And if someone wants to research, I use quote finger research, because who are they learning from? Learning from someone else who believes and is convinced of the way that they look at the evidence. You start reading that, you start listening to that, that idea is coming in through your senses, you're getting emotionally involved. And if you like to feel outraged or powerless or like a victim, or that other people are more in control of your life than you, then you are absolutely going to accept the idea that the world is lying to you. Everybody, NASA's lying to you about whether the Earth is flat or round. And you're going to all of a sudden adopt that belief through repetition and emotional involvement with an idea. And you have said something very interesting in the past. I view beliefs like t-shirts. I can just change them. Most people don't, because they don't realize the amount of repetition and the amount of emotion that goes into it. And then they identify themselves with that belief. I am a flat earther.
I am this.
And so now you're not challenging an idea, you're challenging an identity. Now, feed that over into politics.
Wait, say that one more time.
Into religion.
Hold on. Wait, you said something really interesting. I want to make sure everybody hears that. You're not challenging an idea, you're challenging an identity. I see this with weight loss all the time, because many people will identify with, I cannot lose weight. I am a big person. I'm just a big old girl. I'm a big bone dude. Like, hear this stuff all the time. I used to go around saying this stuff. I'm just a big guy, right? It's just who I am. I'm just a big guy. It was a belief.
I did too. Todd,
but the reality is, it was my identity.
Todd must weigh 273 pounds, because that's kind of where I'm always at. That must be what Todd is. So I must accept that that's what I am. And when I accepted that, man, I hit almost 300 pounds.
And you're hitting on something, I think, we kind of danced around it, but I want to shine a spotlight on it. the community impacts your beliefs from the moment you were born.
100%.
Your community is influencing everything you believe. And what Todd said there, I think, is really important, because I didn't really, like when he said it to me, it made sense. And I had definitely heard it before, but I'd never really pondered on it and considered the notion that things I learned, heard, felt, experienced until I was somewhere between 6 and 8, I didn't critically have any judge. I wasn't critically assessing any of that. It was just going in like an open cup. And I just believed everything's true because I just believed what my parents told me. I just believed what my community told me. And as I got older, I kept believing them because everything they've told me has always worked out exactly how they told me it was going to work out. So I'm going to keep believing them. And in the regards, because again, so much what I do is with weight loss, the community will keep a person big. Because the person, every time they try to do something that goes against the beliefs of the community will rebel. It's like what's the word if you get sick? An antibody response, right? It's like the community fights back to reject the belief that is being inserted into it of like, hey, maybe we don't have to go crazy with desserts at the special occasion. Maybe that's just not even a thing. And of course, the community's like, what do you mean we can't have all this good food at our dessert? That's not how we do things. That's disordered thinking. Like, they'll just vehemently fight back against it. I mean, the biggest resistance I get with weight loss information that I provide is from big people. It's not from those that are losing weight and those that are thin. Most of them don't argue with me too much. But those that are big are the ones that argue with me the most, because I am saying things that I now understand from my work with you. I am directly challenging their beliefs, calling it out.
But you're challenging a subconscious belief. And let's talk about the difference here. Belief is not in the conscious mind. Right now, everybody, you're listening to us through your ears. Maybe you're driving to work, which, by the way, if you're driving, you're more in a subconscious state of mind than you think. You're mostly unconscious, going 80 miles an hour down the freeway, trusting little painted lines on the freeway to keep you safe. It's an automatic habit. You ever drive somewhere and go, oh my gosh, how did I get here? It's because your subconscious
just started autopilot. Dude, I'm in the town I grew up in just a few weeks ago. I drove halfway to my childhood home, and I was like, why am I driving over here? There's nothing over here. But yeah, totally just automatic autopilot, subconscious driving.
Right? So you're listening with your conscious mind, but your belief doesn't reside in your conscious thinking mind. Your belief resides in your subconscious. Now, the Greeks would call that the heart. That's why we have an emotional mind, subconscious mind. It's all the same thing, but it's subconscious, meaning it's below conscious awareness. So when you have a visceral reaction to something, that means there's a belief there that's guiding your emotional behavior, and the thoughts that you're thinking. You think the thoughts to reinforce a belief that you're not even aware of because you've just accepted it. And so you're absolutely right. Your community is so important. I read a study the other day. I texted you about it, that you are 40% more likely to be overweight if your group of friends are overweight. Take a close look at the 5 people you associate most with. Chances are you share the same spiritual or religious beliefs. Chances are you probably share the same political beliefs. Chances are you have the same relative health. Chances are you probably earn about the same amount of money. All of that is subconscious belief programming conditioning that can be changed if you wanted to.
And this is what they said, pulling away from a community is tough. I mean, in a realm of weight loss, I know it's the same if you're trying to pull yourself up in an economic status from one tier to another. I had a mentor, his name is Scott, back when I was teen when he taught me this. He told me, he goes, you know the story of crabs, don't you? I still remember exactly how he told me. He goes, you can put one crab in a bucket, it'll climb right out. You put another crab in a bucket, the moment one starts climbing up, the other crab will grab it and pull it back down. So you can have as many crabs as you want in an open bucket and they'll never let each other leave. And that really sank in. And for the rest of my life, since then, I've been attempting to really understand that and see that in the world. And it really is true. When Todd mentioned I think of beliefs like T-shirt, that's because as an adult, I'm not going to get into it here, but I've gone through a few tectonic belief system shifts. And I've done it a few times to the point that I'm just not going to get into it, actually, because it's a weird experience to do that a few times. Every single time, the community that I was in didn't want to let me go. And here's the thing, though. I don't think it's because they cared about me. Sure, in some cases, yes. But a lot of times It was because I was doing something the community says when a person tries to pull away, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get them and pull them back, even though if they barely know me.
Because And I think consciously it's done out of love. Consciously they want to protect someone from making mistake, but it also
Definitely,
has to
I
do
agree.
more with people that they're not critically aware or looking at themselves enough. And subconsciously you're challenging their own beliefs, their own homeostasis. And let's be honest, the majority of people in the world do not want to take responsibility for their lives and their results. They're more comfortable with someone else being in control, even if they hate it and are outraged and frustrated about it. And for you to take self-responsibility, change a belief, and then change a result causes them discomfort that they are probably not equipped to examine, look at, and diagnose. And
Well, let
that's
me
all
tell
it
you,
is.
for me, losing weight while eating bread in a room full of people that always lost all their weight with keto and convinced you can't lose weight with while eating bread. It's funny. I learned later they were all behind the scenes talking shit about me, saying like, "Well, he's probably out there like throwing up. He's probably starving himself all these other times." Like all this is like, no, I'm not doing any of these things. They just literally couldn't accept how I was making it work, and I deal with that all the time. I was telling you, I'll share here on the podcast. Todd and I were talking about something the other day. Another cool thing I learned with Todd. So again, I want to share some of these experiences, everybody, so you kind of know, like when you're learning from someone, you don't always know the lesson until later. I mean, sometimes I do, but sometimes I got to go through it a few things. So one of the things, and I've known this about mentors, is my favorite mentors sort of annoy me because they won't leave me alone. Like every time I say something, they call me on my shit, or I'll say something like, "But is it really that way?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is." They're like, "Explain it." And I'm like, ugh. Even if I'm right, it's annoying. But sometimes, and a lot of the times, I'm like, "Oh, I don't actually have a very good explanation for this stance," and it's frustrating. But one of the things that I discovered with Todd specifically, because I intentionally was wanting to wander into areas that I didn't want to deal with, and money was one of them, and there were times where I would feel myself push back and I didn't know. Now, but one time, Todd and we were talking about weight loss stuff. And I said something. I don't know if you remember this. I said something to you and I was watching you and you just stopped. And I know you've had a lot of coaches and mentors, but you just stopped and you're like, and I can see you like, you shook your head. You had this look on your face and you're like, and I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you said something to the effect of, "My brain is not letting me hear what you're saying. I need you to say that again." And then I said it again, and you're like, "Wow, my brain is not wanting to let me listen to this." Like I said it to you twice, and both times you acknowledge, "I don't want to hear this." And I don't remember what it was, but that fascinated me because I know you know about beliefs. I know you can change it. Like I know you know all these things as I'm learning from, and yet you're still having this like this resistance to what I'm saying. And it was something I just know I was right. I don't remember what it was, but I was definitely right. But it was one of these things where it's like, kind of like how you were telling me what I was looking for. I needed to change my mindset, not my actions. I just didn't understand, even though you were
And
right.
I did an episode in my podcast just recently. I think it's titled "The Body Holds You Back," because these thoughts and ideas that are beliefs that we hold on to, it's not just like a vague amorphous thing. When you think a thought, there's a biological reaction inside of your body. Neurons fire in your brains. The more that those neurons fire together, they end up hardwiring together and it builds a neural network. That neural network also has a chemical component to it. Neurons only link together if they share chemicals. So the receptor actually only has a limited amount of chemical bind or neuropeptides, whatever it is, to join the neurons together. And when the neurons link together and that chemical is released, it is hardwired. And that chemical is released as a feeling, an emotion. Now, you have an extensive neural network of the way that you've been thinking, guided by subconscious belief systems. And I did a TikTok live with someone else who was asking a question: how come some people just aren't compassionate? Well, they don't have a neural network for compassion for whatever reason. They can't think that way.
Their
So there
brain.
was
So you
something you were
say like
telling me,
their brain is literally not wired
not
to think
wired.
compassionately in that way.
Correct.
But that
Just
doesn't mean
like
it couldn't be wired that way. It's just not wired that way right then.
Correct.
Okay.
So a person that is wired for poverty, for example, cannot think the way that a millionaire thinks. They're not hardwired. And a millionaire that's hardwired cannot think the way that someone's homeless on the street. It's completely different neural networks, different habits of thought, different belief systems, all of that. And I had the awareness that what you were saying in that moment, or the intuition maybe, the gut feeling, what you were saying in that moment was, and I remember the moment, but not the details, which is odd enough because the moment was emotional for me to go, I know that my body isn't hearing this. My body's not accepting it. So you have to say it a bunch of times, which means repetition of an idea creates understanding. A repetition builds neural pathways. Once it clicks, we all say, "Oh, that finally clicked for me." That means that the ideas and thoughts biologically in your body have reached out and finally joined together, and you experience that emotional chemical change and shift and feeling. We call it a feeling, but it's biologically it clicks. The word, the idea, the belief has become flesh, and now you can use that idea and operate from it. It's so fascinating. I had that awareness.
This is fascinating. And I think what a thing I really want everybody listening to hear with what Todd was saying, one of the things Todd taught me is like, if you're earning $50,000 a year, it's because you're thinking the thoughts of a person earning $50,000 a year. If you want to earn $100,000 a year, you got to think the thoughts of a person earning $100,000 a year. But the takeaway that I want everybody to have, because that is true, like a person who is living in poverty is not going to see and think the same way a person who is a multimillionaire is. But that doesn't mean the person in poverty is incapable of doing it. It just means in this moment, their brain is configured in a certain way. And I don't remember who I was having this conversation with, but in this conversation, we were talking about the concept of being consciously aware of what it is you're doing that you don't want to be doing. It's frustrating how that is not enough to get you to stop doing it. And like, I want to start operating in this way. Just identifying it does nothing. And the way I've recently started thinking this in terms of, it's like, I am aware of a way that you can think in Japanese, because I'm learning about Buddhism right now, and I'm learning some concepts. I have to actually learn the Sanskrit words because there's no English words for them. And I have to learn the Sanskrit word, and then I have to learn the definition behind it so I can understand what I'm reading. Otherwise, I can't fully conceptualize it because English fails. So you could think of a different language as a different way of thinking. So me just being aware of thinking in Japanese isn't enough for me to be able to think in Japanese. However, if I've decided I'd like to, I could reprogram, recondition, or rewire whatever brain you want to use in such a way that I can now think in Japanese. But I have to go learn Japanese to do it. Like I have to, and that's going to require learning all these ideas and all these concepts. But thinking in Japanese isn't enough to just learn the language. I have to learn the culture. Otherwise, I don't understand the cultural significance of certain words. And then I have to learn that cultural present tense and past tense. I have to learn all the past culture so I understand the words that are being said to me. And I think it's easy to see this with language. It's a little harder when we're talking the language of, let's say, weight loss. It's like when I was big, I literally thought a completely different way than I think now. And that's where I think people mess up my approach with weight loss. It's like, my answer is change your brain. Change how you think. Yes, you got to do all these mechanics. That's all well and good. But if you don't change your brain, you won't keep doing it. You'll go back to what your brain wants to do. Now, what do you think about all that?
Well, so I'm thinking about it in terms of, there's one word that comes to mind. It's immersion. If you want to think in Japanese, you have to immerse yourself in that environment. It's not enough just to read it from a textbook. You got to talk about it with people. You probably got to go live in Japan. You probably have to be immersed in that. You want to, if you have a, let me say this. Let's back up a second. Why would you change a belief? Why would you even look at changing a belief? What do you think about that? Let's go there.
Why would I, Chris Terrell, or why do I think most people do it?
Well, you, Chris Terrell, have a different awareness. I think, why do most people maybe listening to this, why would they even be motivated to look at their belief system and try and change it?
Because the way I would answer that is, well, actually, I think it'd be the same for me too. They're getting a result in their life that they don't want anymore.
That's it. That's it. Your result that you have, it's not just a belief. It's about the immersion that you have in that current mindset, your community, your environment, your habits, your patterns, your routines, the conversations you have with people. Everything there on the outside of you is also on the inside, which means that the outside is in control of you. So if you're in a community of people that aren't healthy, or you have that friends and family that are big people, then chances are you're feeling and thinking the same way that they are. So are you surprised that you have the same result? No, of course not. If you like that result, and it's working for you. If you like what you're getting in life, keep doing it. If you don't like what you're doing in life, start looking at your belief and then really understand that you will have to immerse yourself in a different way of thinking, different habits, different routines, different people. And over time, we got to be kind to ourselves as well, because this is not a quick fix. It doesn't happen right away. Your journey's been what, 5 years, Chris? Something like that. Your dad passed away how long ago?
5 years.
5 years ago,
5
right?
years.
Now, 5 years, you can look at it two ways. You can say, wow, that's a really long time. I've got a 5-year journey ahead of me. Well, yeah, you probably do. Or you can look and go, 5 years and you've totally changed your life? That's amazing. It's amazing, because your life is so different in so many levels. What has made the difference to you in your journey is you immersed yourself unconsciously at first in the thinking of people who were always thin and healthy. That was something that blew my mind. Everybody's studying people that have
new approach.
Right. I've learned from other people that had lost weight before, but you asked the question I never thought of asking is, how do people who've never struggled with weight loss, how do they think about food? What do they do? How do they monitor their eating? What do they do for exercise? Oh, my pants are getting a little tight. I probably have to cut back, which was a foreign.
It's interesting when I did
concept.
that, when I started talking to people that never had a weight problem. First, I felt some internal resistance, but like, well, I shouldn't talk to them. They don't know. But the more I started thinking, like, no, I need to do this. And what was fascinating was how differently we thought. There were things that I thought were wrong, that were bad, that were disordered, that were no good. Like, there were reasons why I would quit my journey that folks that were always thin, they're like, no, it's just how I live life. Like, why would that make you quit? Like, they just couldn't even understand. We didn't see it the same way. I was talking to my brother. I was like, just the other day, I was like, what do you do if you've noticed you've gained a little bit? He's like, I just start working on it right then. I was like, I'm like, you don't wait till Monday? He's like, no. I'm like, why would I wait till Monday? I just start working on it now. Like, he just can't even fathom. Why would I schedule working on this problem that is a problem right now? Why would I schedule it 5 days into the future? I'm just going to fix it now. Or, he talked about, again, I had another thin person. They were talking about exercise, and the person said, look, if you haven't exercised in the last 2 weeks, you've quit. And like when they said it, I was like, oh, whoa, that's a bold way to do it. But I got to thinking about it. Really, if you haven't done something in the last 2 weeks that you were doing before, you've quit. You just haven't accepted that you've quit yet. But you're done. You've moved on. Like, you can come back to it, but like, nah, you're done. And I got to think, like, that's true. And I see this with people all the time. Like, oh, they're like, yeah, I'm working out. Oh, how much you worked out in the last 2 weeks? Oh, one time. I'm like, it doesn't sound like you're working out. And I've started intentionally adding the last 2 weeks to my questions. I used to say, how are you tracking your calories? Yeah, great, cool. Now it's like, over the last 2 weeks, are you tracking your calories? Yeah, great. That means you should be able to show me. Or, hey, are you tracking your steps? Yeah, last 2 weeks. And I started noticing it fleshes out those that are doing it from those that aren't, because we have so much bias towards ourselves to what we think we're doing, and we don't quite sense time the same way when we're in this journey. But when I'm talking to people that are always been thin, they conceptualize all of it entirely differently. And that really, really helped me find brand new ideas to try. And it gave me permission to think, oh, it's not disordered to just be hungry and not eat until dinner. I used to think that was wrong. At like 3 o'clock, I'm hungry. I should eat. This would be wrong not to eat. How dare I not let myself have food and deprive myself? What's wrong with my body? I would think all these thoughts. And I'm talking to other thin people, and I'm like, what do you do if you're hungry and it's 3 o'clock? They're like, sometimes I have a snack. Well, a lot of times I just wait till dinner. What if you're really hungry? Well, then I might have a small snack. What kind of snack? And they're not saying M&Ms, So it's just fascinating, even the kinds of snacks they'd pick. But this community, these other people influencing us, I think this is why I needed to work with someone like you. It's why I needed to be in a community. It's why right now I have a coach. Like I've always had one. I imagine you have a coach right now too, or right at this moment. Transitioning.
I'm transitioning. I'm transitioning. So I'm also in a place of reinvention, other tectonic, belief system changes and things like that. And so I'm seeking that mentor. But let me also say I'm always learning. I'm reading several books, right now. I'm listening to other things. Probably the person I'm listening to right now most of all is Jim Rohn, and listening to him like nonstop right now. I'm also listening to Bob. still and going through a new program, not a new program, but going through a program again, 6 weeks with some of my advanced students. So I'm always studying and learning. I'm still trying to connect to Bob Proctor as my mentor, but there's going to come a time when I need to learn from somebody else in real time as well.
Oh, I hear. Well, that's how it was with me and my dad. I still kept wanting to learn from him, but it was, yeah, there is always that time we have to let a mentor kind of be the part of the journey in the past. And like my mentor now, though, is actually one of mine from when I was in my early 20s. So I'm revisiting another mentor after 20 years of not really seeing each other. And it's fascinating to revisit that relationship after I've changed so much because he knows where I was 20 years ago. And so it's a really interesting experience to have that. But I wanted to say something that I missed earlier about the beliefs. When we see these different opposing beliefs coming together, I've noticed something. There's the reaction that you gave, Todd, where it's like, I'm resisting hearing this. I don't want to hear it, for whatever reason. But I've noticed, and I would feel this with you internally, where I would feel very upset at what you were saying. Like it was upsetting me. I was getting angry. And sometimes I understood why, and sometimes I really didn't understand why it was upsetting me. And I used to see this in my clients, and I didn't understand. And I would think, I've done something wrong. I need to stop doing that. I'm upsetting them. But as I was going through it with you, and you were teaching me about mindset, and I was beginning to come around to this concept of something that Bob Proctor, from his program, where he holds up the book and he talks about there's different sides of a book, and there's different sides to every story, and there's different ways to understand things. And I'm starting to understand this. I was like, wait a minute. I used to think of weight loss through this way. Now I think of it 180, entire other side of it. I see weight loss, I see weight management differently than I did before. Let's take religion. I used to be super staunch Mormon. Now I don't know what I am, but I'm definitely not that. And I see a religion entirely differently than I did before. But what I noticed with you is I would feel this anger, and yet I changed. And I would want to come back. Like when we'd go away, I'd go away and think about it. And I'm like, I want to come back and talk about this more. And sometimes it may have came across I was trying to convince you, but really what I was attempting to do was take my point of view and say, poke holes in it. Because as you ruined my beliefs, I had no choice but to figure out how to repair it. And sometimes I couldn't repair it. I mean, sometimes it was obliterated. Like beliefs, with like the table legs that hold up the belief, you would just knock out the table legs. Or help me knock them down myself. But either way, same result of the table collapses. And I've started discovering in my own practice, and over this last year especially, I was telling you about the term of allergic reaction.
Yeah.
And I've noticed if I say something that is too far opposite of what another person's deeply held belief is, it's like an allergic response. They aggressively repel. I tested this week. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but on my TikTok, I thought
I'm glad you bring it up.
I decided I'm going to do something because I do believe this. I've been too scared to share it. I genuinely don't think we made the right call by classifying obesity as a disease. I understand why it was done. I get it. I've read the history into it. Like I understand. I think it has done more net harm than net benefit in doing so. With that being said, that is a very polarizing belief. And I was curious what would happen if I said it on TikTok and I very clearly explained my position. And I even in it say, actually, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And blah, blah, blah. And I did it in a 5-minute TikTok. And then I did follow-up long ones. Why? Because I've noticed if a person has an allergic reaction, they literally just stop listening. They don't hear anything more after the allergic reaction is triggered. And if you go to my TikTok channel and find those, go into the comments, watch the whole video, and then go into the comments and find people that are upset. And you will notice they don't have any problems with what I said. They have a problem with my position. And all they did is say, you're wrong. But they don't actually talk about any of the points I made. They don't refute the points I made. But now those that agreed with me, they will latch on to one of the points I made in the video and they'll talk about it. They'll echo it. And I just find this fascinating that humans will react so strongly to something that is opposite of what they believe in their logic and their worldview. Now, you said you were hoping I'd bring it up. I'm curious why.
I was. Because I disagree.
Oh, do tell. Oh, this will be fun. Tell me about it.
Obesity is a disease, but it is a disease of the mind. It's a disease of mindset.
Well, maybe we don't disagree.
I know
don't
that
think
we don't.
obesity is a disease. I think obesity is a symptom or a condition of something else, like a headache.
It's also
Like a
let's
headache isn't a
understand.
disease; it's a symptom.
Well, let's also understand what disease is, and I'll ask you to recall. By the way, I know that you teach some of the stuff that you've learned. You've got a 3-week paradigm shift thing coming up for the guild, and you teach the terror barrier and some of that. I'll have you recall the terror barrier of where disease comes from. Disease comes from how you're thinking. You're thinking thoughts of worry and doubt consciously, or ignorance, or you don't know any better in your conscious mind. You're in some sort of discomfort, fear. We call it fear. Most people don't even recognize fear when they're in it, but your body's in a state of anxiety. It means you're in fear. We don't know how to deal with the unknown. We don't know how to deal with that. So we suppress, we avoid looking at something. We avoid dealing with it. That suppression, you suppress anxiety long term, that turns into some kind of depression. You're also going to suppress action. You're going to suppress your behavior. You're going to suppress learning. You're going to push that all down. And it's long-term depression puts the body at dis-ease, long-term discomfort, dis-ease. And long-term dis-ease, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, is going to manifest physically in the body. We just talked about how thoughts create beliefs and how it links together, and you have the click and the aha. What you think affects your biology. So it does
100%.
manifest physically in your body, but the difference is most people think obesity is genetically inherited, and it's almost a genetic inevitability that they're having it. And that disease, because it's genetic, persists, and there's no way around it. You know, there's a whole field of study in genetics talking about how the environment influences your genetics. This is how you can have twins. One develops a chronic health condition and the other one's perfectly healthy, but they've gone off and they've been in different environments. The thoughts, the feelings, the environment's effects our biology. So I'm not saying that obesity, clearly, I mean, right now at my weight, I'm obese, to some degree, in somebody's measurement. I think I am. It's manifested in my body physically, but I know that it is a result of how I've been thinking, of what I believe about myself, of my emotional beliefs towards myself and my behaviors, and it has manifested physically. It is a disease, but not in the way that most people are thinking about it. So we do agree.
Because I'm referring to it more in the clinical medical. The AMA classified it as a disease, and a whole bunch of other organizations said we support the classification of obesity as a disease. But I agree with what you're saying.
We're going to put it in. We're going to put it in our diagnosis, and it's a diagnosable condition, right? That has all of that. Absolutely, I think it's the wrong perspective to have on it. But I think it's
what's
valuable
interesting is people. So many people now, they have latched onto it and say, oh, this is why I'm this way. It's because I have a disease. And I'm like, that is just a belief. Now, it may be a physical condition creating the obesity. Like, I've been learning about the role of genes and the role of hormones with weight. And yes, some people feel more food noise than others, and it is a genetic predisposition. They literally have genes that cause them to feel hunger more intensely than somebody else. And I have witnessed this. I have seen this in people where they very clearly have very little food noise, and I was somebody that was and still has a lot of food noise. So it's not that, but I think the difference is, though, we're assuming the obesity is the thing. And I'm like, it is the signal that something else is happening. And this something else could be one of so many different things. Some of them, of course, being medical, like let's take many females that have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. This is a medical condition that 100% can inhibit a person's ability to lose weight. Doesn't prevent it, it just inhibits it. It's something they have to work through. That is a medical condition. But a person's belief might prevent them from working on it. Because they believe, oh, there's nothing I can do. I'm just a big person. I'm stuck this way. And it's like, no, There's things you can do about it. You may never have a six-pack, but, it's fun, but it's not all it's cracked up to be. You got to say no to food a lot to keep a six-pack. So it's like you can have a regularly, by BMI standards at least, you can be in the average weight even with a health condition. Yeah. you can accommodate things. Genetics don't make you 500 pounds. That's genetics paired with, I think, with what you're saying, Todd, mentalities that
Mentalities
exacerbate
from
the condition.
your environment as well, but also, I don't know how much you've read and studied into epigenetics. Epigenetics is a layer of information that lays on top of your genes that's inherited. You can inherit trauma from multiple generations in the past. I mean, if you're big and your parents were big and your grandparents were big, I guarantee you there's some level of epigenetic encoding in there, which is different than genetics. So there is some inherited part of it, but I'm reading in Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, I pulled it up the other day, You Are the Placebo. Studies from places like the American Heart Institute, your attitude, your mindset, your positivity, being an optimist can do more to improve your health outcomes for someone that's at risk for heart disease. Doctors do not have all of the answers. In fact, the best doctors are the ones that recognize we don't really know all of the impact and effects, environment, the way that you think, the way that you feel. They certainly don't mention beliefs, I suppose, in a medical exam room, but we don't know how that impacts your body, because environmental factors can trigger genes just as much as your genetic makeup. We're conditioned environmentally in genetics. Now, we can debate. I was debating with someone on Instagram who was saying, well, you can't overcome your genetics. If you have Down syndrome, you have Down syndrome, and that's how you're going to be. I said, yeah, but if you have Down syndrome and you're raised in a home where you are being shamed, you are being abused, you are being blamed for the way that you're going to grow up with a much different really belief system and different outcomes than someone who is compassionate and supportive, and someone who is parents who are willing to reorganize their lifestyle, their home, and do whatever they can to help that child succeed. Those outcomes are based on environment, and environment influences the way that we think. I think mindset gets a bad rap because a lot of people want to discredit it as positive thinking. Positive thinking doesn't solve anything. No, mindset is everything we've talked about. How you think, how you feel, what you believe, what you do impacts your results. Now, and ultimately, I think it comes down to one question. You can believe the outside environment, the people, conditions, and circumstances outside of you have more power over you, or that you have something inside of you that can be more powerful in spite of those things. And that's a real tectonic belief system shift that people need to have for any result in their life to change, especially when it comes to health and weight. And those are some beliefs that, it's taken me 2 years. I've had changes in those beliefs from working with you. And there's times, if you want to say in the last 2 weeks, have I been to a guild meeting? No, I quit. I don't know when, but I did. I haven't really stopped exercising. I maybe quit for a while, or I did different things. But I've had some major belief system changes that have helped me set myself up to success, which also include maybe working with the doctor, because we have found some medical things that maybe need to change. I think I can tie those probably back into mindset, but we'll have to follow up on that at a later date.
Well, but I think, one of the things that is important for people to hear, because I'm with you, positive thinking and toxic positivity, because there's too many people that have tried to overcome things with positivity. And the way I look at it is, it's like you can run east confident all you want you're going to find a sunset, and you're never going to find it. Because you got to have a right plan. You got to have a good strategy. You got to have a good plan. But I look at that as an extension of mindset. Because if you don't have the mindset of, I also need a plan that makes some sort of sense, you won't do it. Or if you have a mindset of, I can't handle somebody being critical of a plan. So when you show someone your plan to find a sunset in the east, if you're too afraid somebody might poke holes in it, that's a mindset thing. You won't show it to anybody, and now your plan won't work. But if you had the mindset of, I enjoy getting feedback from others, I have the mindset of, I don't mind having holes poked in my plan because the ultimate objective is I obtain my goal, and I have the mindset of, I can set my pride aside. These are ways of thinking that would prevent a person or encourage a person to take action. And I see this with weight loss all the time, where a person won't speak up to get the information they need, and it's because of beliefs and mentalities that are stopping them from doing it. But they could have the answer they want. I've actually had to start telling, especially when I work on clients one-on-one, I was like, if you are struggling and it has been 24 hours, you have to call me. You can't wait.
Yep.
Don't wait and
Yep.
see
Me
me in
too.
a week. Call me then. Because it's their
Yep.
beliefs that it forces them to get into that tango with their beliefs of, am I going to reach out to them or not?
There's studies that show that when you're struggling, 15 minutes of help and support can help redirect you so quickly. And so I tell my clients the same thing. And this is a good place probably to start wrapping at least this episode up. You're in your head, that voice in your head, you're behind enemy lines. Most of us, I think most all human, you cannot exist on this planet without experiencing some kind of trauma, challenge, suffering, pain. You just can't. We take those experiences.
Life is going to have that.
But we take those experiences and we start telling a story, the story about what it means to me and what it means to my identity and who I am. And that information, those ideas become beliefs. And that belief system, if you have a result that you don't like, that belief system is running you. And if you're trying to just fix it on your own, I'm sure you can read all the books, you can do all the meditate and go to the seminars and all of that. But still, you're trying to change your mind from within your own mind. You've got to work and you got to immerse yourself and work with other people, a community. And you've got to have someone, a mentor, a coach outside of you that can help see your blind spots and call you on it.
And I think, that community part especially, I think your community has to be willing to help you see those blind spots too.
Yeah, totally.
Which again, it's the great thing. The community can help you change and become a new you, but the community can also prevent you from changing and becoming the new. That very same community might stop you from moving past them, which I've experienced too.
You know, in the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, there's a whole chapter on persistence. Bob was a big believer in persistence. He believed that was one of the most important of the 13 principles there. He actually challenged us to read it for 30 days out loud, find a reading partner and read it regularly. He says there's 4 things that you need to be able to persist. And this is where mindset is not just positive thinking, but number 1, you need a definite goal, something that really excites you, a burning desire for it. You do need a plan. Number 2, you need a plan that's expressed in continuous action. Number 3, develop a mind closed tightly against the negative influences of family, friends, acquaintances. You either have to develop a tight mind or leave that community. But number 4, you need a friendly, harmonious alliance with people that will encourage you to follow through with your plans, with your purpose to reach your goals. It's essentially, it's all part of mindset, but that's essential. You can't change your problem from within the problem. I love, is it Albert Einstein, or at least that's who's attributed to the quote, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it.
Yeah, I believe
I think that really summarizes mindset completely. And it's applicable absolutely to your body, to your health journey, whatever your health journey is. You've got beliefs that are controlling you. Yeah.
Well, and I came across a quote from C.S. There's 2 quotes that have really helped me, like when the concept of this change, because I'm always trying to understand, why won't we change when we know we don't like our results? You know, the fun thing I'm learning about knowledge and wisdom and being a human is we're all just rediscovering the same stuff over and over again and passing it on to the next generation, it seems like, and adding little bits to it as we go. So one of them was from Orson Scott Card. He said, we question all our beliefs except for those we truly believe and those we never think to question. Oh. The second quote that really I like to pair with that really kind of helps me see this is, and this is from C.S. Lewis, we'll often choose a familiar captivity over an unfamiliar freedom. And while I realize, and I see this in myself, I do this and I see this with others, we may have a result we don't like, but there's that third saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And our fear will keep us there, because when you let go of those beliefs and you let go of those old results, there is this moment of this void between 2 galaxies where there's nothing. And it's scary to be there because you just don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't have a plan. Like when I first started working with you, that's what made it so scary is because like I'm agreeing to do this, but it's like, I don't know how this is going to work. The only thing I know is just to move forward another step. I don't know anything past that. And I'm now saying I'm not meant to know it.
No, because the unknown, the very thing that you could risk it all, that could risk all of the failure, is the very thing that enables a miracle to happen, that enables you to reach everything that you want. You have to face that unknown.
You do. And And you have to be willing to question the unquestionable in your mind.
You know, you asked in talking about this quote, why do people resist change? I think that people fundamentally have a good heart. I think people are good. I think people want to do good, want to be good, want to think of themselves as the good guy. And, you know, we all have things that happen to us, and we can either be victims of it and be powerless. We can be villains and we can inflict harm and pain onto other people, or we can become the hero of our own journey and change ourselves. But even like Luke Skywalker needed Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda as a guide to help him. And the guides that you go to are the people that have had their own transformation from victim to hero in their own life. And then they can guide you forward. You know, we're resistant to look at our beliefs. We're resistant to look at our identities because we want to be good. And we really can't analyze. We're uncomfortable to analyze and say, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe there's something about me that I need to change. And boy, you know, that's hard. That is hard to accept. But that's where
especially for a person who's never done it before.
Lies. Right. We're surrounded again by a community of people that want to blame the government or blame the politics or blame, you know, the economy or blame the current state of world affairs or blame, you know, religion blames the devil or whatever it is. All of those people just want to be good and want to have a better life, but they feel that they can't. So they must seek up and create, you know, devils and monsters to do their wars for them so that they remain good. You know what? I started this off by saying, I just want to be better because I want to listen to other people who have a better result and be curious enough so that I can improve myself because I feel like I am a good person. I have a good heart. Mm-hmm. I'm tired of holding myself back.
It gets exhausting holding yourself back, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
I mean, I know I feel that. Like sometimes I just like, gosh, like just holding the reins back, just let them go. But you know what I find? I'm curious for you. Here's one of the things that holds that why I don't let go. Because I mean, it's fear that's usually stopping me from just letting myself be unleashed. But one of them is, and this is my current thing I'm working through, is truly releasing, being concerned with what other people think about me.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
Like that is, there's a lot of areas of life I'm doing okay, but man, sometimes it's hard, you know?
Do you know why though? Do you know? Because it all comes down to judgment. Again, this is all mindset. From a very early age, we're judging things based on pleasure and pain. This is good. Mm-hmm. I like that. More, please. Ooh, that's bad. I don't like that. Let's have less of that. And so we go around the world classifying everything, good, bad, good, bad. We have interactions with other people. I like how this person treated me and made me feel. I like this person. I don't like how that person treated me and made me feel. I don't like that person, good person, bad person. We're judging everything. We have hardwired our mind to judge and classify everything. You know the scripture, judge not lest ye be judged. I used to think of that in terms of God judging me. No. If you form the habit of judging and classifying everything as good and bad, when you look in the mirror, what choice do you have but to also judge yourself?
Oh, I get what you're saying. Hold on. I want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. Okay, that helped me there. You said at the end. If I'm in the habit of judging everything outside of me as good and bad and always rendering a judgment because I've conditioned myself to always judge what I see when I gaze upon myself, whether in a mirror or metaphorically, I'm going to pass judgment.
And I want to be good. So if I feel like I'm the problem, I must be bad. And so I shouldn't look at myself that way. We have all the voice in your head is not a positive one. It's not your friend. You're behind enemy lines. I said that before, but you're suppressing it. And whatever you suppress festers and grows and gets stronger. This is why our negative mindset or negative belief about ourselves is holding us back. It's a limiting belief. You may not recognize it a limiting belief, but you want to be good. And so you judge yourself, but you ignore that judgment because you're not looking for a way to improve. If you looked at yourself and go, well, I don't like that I do that unemotionally and said, well, I know that I'm a good person. I have good goals. I want to contribute positively to the world. I want to have a healthier life, better family. How can I, from a place of non-judgment, look at just improving myself? Because I know that I can always get better.
And it's interesting I agree with what you're saying about the judgment thing. For me, I'm attempting to find a place of indifference. We're not judging
Neutrality.
things as good or bad. It's just saying, like, one of the things I'm finding I'm doing that's been helping me with the not worrying about what other people thinking is I'm acutely aware of that if whatever I'm looking at in life, the gaps in my understanding, if I don't keep myself in check, my brain just fills in the gaps with stories, and I can't remember which was story that I made up and which was fact after a while. And I have to catch myself in the moment to stop filling in gaps with stories and assuming what other people are thinking about me or assuming what other people's motives were for why they did things. And, or when something happened, of course, my brain is trying to create the story of, oh, this terrible thing happened. Why did this happen? And my brain starts creating it. I'm really attempting to find this place now of this thing happened. End of thought. It's just acknowledging that this happened. Were there consequences? Sure. They're this, they're that. But it's like, I'm finding it's easier if I stopped assuming that everything is happening for a reason that is like, and sometimes it's just happening due to cause and effect. It's so impersonal as to be personal is how I've started thinking of it.
Yeah, and that releases you. It releases you from the story. It releases you from letting that control you. It allows you to see other places to go, other ways to think, other ways to feel, other ways to believe, other ways to do. And ultimately what we all want is freedom, but that freedom just comes from within, comes from, knowing who you are, knowing where you want to go, and then developing the belief system, the mindset that's in alignment with it. And you can't do that if everything outside of you is controlling you.
100%. And with changing myself, I realized, we've been talking about that community aspect so much. If I spent all my time worrying about what the community thinks of me, and I'm spending all my time trying to make the community's opinion of me happy at the expense of my own, it's like, that don't work. Like, that don't work at all. That made me miserable doing that. Just spending my days worrying about such a thing.
Yeah, 100%. I want to share like my journey in the last 2 years with you and talk about some of the beliefs that have fundamentally changed with me. Now, I weigh kind of the same that I did when we first started. We started in a private coaching engagement, and I'm okay with that because I had a lifetime of, I'll get emotional. I had a lifetime of bullying and abuse in school from peers. I remember playing baseball in second grade, and my coach pinched my stomach and said, well, I can pinch an inch. Like, I felt fat from that day forward. I felt like I was big from that day forward. That was my belief, and that was my story that I told myself. And I quit baseball because I didn't understand the game. I didn't have good coaches that taught me the game or how physically to move and what to do. And I created this huge aversion to exercise. I was in sixth grade. I had developed exercise-induced asthma, which was really my resistance to running around the damn track in elementary school. I had a coach screaming at me, stop being such a wimp, in front of my entire grade. My PE coach. Now it was the 80s. He was always a little red-faced, so I think he was always maybe a little tipsy as well, probably. I mean, we got away with stuff in the 80s that you couldn't get away with now because we're just more aware.
True that.
But I never did any sports. I never did any exercise. I still haven't gone to a gym. I probably need to really confront that fear. But I've maintained my weight. Sure, I've had some highs and some lows, but I've maintained my weight for 2 years, which I've never done before. Never. I've gone for a run. I used to be afraid to go for a run because I had a bad Achilles heel. So I had excuses. I went for my first run. I remember sending you a message and say, it was easier than I thought it would be, and I could have gone further than I did. I never believed that in myself. And that first run, I went out and turned the corner in my neighborhood. It was a Sunday. There was a friend of mine that was pulling out to go to somebody else, and he stopped there and he waved, and I stopped and talked to him. And I told him, thank you, because I'm so scared to death to be seen as my first run. And I'm so glad it was a friendly face that saw me, who says, going for a jog, looking good. I have been more consistent in my exercise than I ever have been. I just, before this, hiked the mountain behind me for 45 minutes, made sure to get my heart rate up. That was great. I actually have gone to the doctor now because you've said, Todd, I've seen you do the things. You're not losing the weight. Something's going on, because that was my assumption. We find a major vitamin D deficiency that causes depression and causes weight gain and causes you potentially to be hungry all the time. I had no idea. I don't hear that anywhere. And I'm not saying no one listen to that and say, well, that's your excuse. That must be my problem. Go to a doctor and find out and get data for that. And I've got some medication to jumpstart my metabolism. You know, this morning I woke up, I hadn't even taken my medication. I was filled with more energy. Why? Because I believed I had answers. I believed I could make more progress. So I did it. Mm-hmm. That has fundamentally changed. I'll also tell you another one. I was so afraid of food. I did get down to 208 at one point. I did Optavia as a health program, which I didn't realize I was probably starving myself, eating 1,000 or 1,200 calories. It still took me a year and a half.
Probably. You were.
Well, it took me
at your size.
And it took me a year and a half to go from 280 maybe down to 208. And with conversations with you, you said, well, you should have been losing weight a lot faster. That's why I went to the doctors. But I was afraid to eat anything that had sugar in it. I was afraid to eat strawberries. When you had me start counting calories, I was amazed at the amount of strawberries and pineapple I could put in my face hole.
A ton.
And how much I had to eat to feel full and how little calories it was compared to a Big Mac or whatever it was. You've taught me more about my body, and I realized my effort in giving up and not giving up and persisting. Gosh, I'm sorry to be emotional on this. If you keep trying, for anybody listening, if you keep trying and you don't give up, you love yourself. That's the evidence that you love yourself. My persistence, everything I've learned has helped me love myself more and love my body. And I'm also realizing, accepting, I'm at the point in my journey where I can accept the body that I'm in and love my stretch marks and still be dissatisfied with them and still use that as motivation to work harder and reach my goals. 100%. My mindset has shifted entirely about my body and my exercise. Hiking up the mountain today, looking at my heart rate, my doctor told me get it above 110 for 30 minutes, and I'm at 105. I'm like, F you, heart rate, get up there. You can do it. This is what you're doing. You want to do this. You want to do this. You want to get up there. You want to be hard. I was going up the final summit. This is what you want to do right now. And I'm talking to myself out loud. No one else is on the mountain. It reminded me of when you did the 4x4x4, the whatever thing you did 2 years ago, that run, because you were talking to yourself. I was talking myself up that mountain. Right now, you're losing weight. Right now, you're reaching your goal. Right now, you're doing this because you love yourself. And that's something that I've just got to thank you for. Well, it does. Welcome, but you know what? With all the mindset coaching that I had been through and the changes that I've had in my life, changes with my family, changes materially, the amount of money that I've earned, all of that, it still had not touched my self-image related to my body, my belief systems about my body and health. And that's something I will forever be grateful for you.
Oh, you're welcome. And, it kind of goes back to that quote of saying, like, we question all our beliefs except for those we truly believe and those we never think to question. It's like, you and I are really we're self-aware to more than we used to be, right? I don't know. I have no way to quantify with the rest of the world. I can say I don't often meet people as self-aware. I do, but not often. You're incredibly self-aware. We're aware of beliefs. We teach people this stuff, and yet we still in our own lives need the same help, go through the same thing, have to repeat the same journey because our brains still work the same way.
Well, ultimately, if you don't have a result that you want, it's because you don't know something. Always be listening to people with better results.
And ignorance isn't an insult.
No, we're all born ignorant. We're all ignorant of something.
Us. I am super ignorant on how this phone works inside, but I know how to use it, and I'm never going to change this. I don't care how it works on the inside.
But you also aren't telling yourself a story and shaming yourself.
Look how terrible I am. I should know better. How do I not know how an iPhone's processor works? It's like, no, because I don't care. But I think that is interesting. When we truly care about something, I don't know if I've ever asked you this. I'm curious your take. I've observed something. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know where it comes from because of parents, but people like to use guilt and shame or mean or bullying internally to self-motivate. They'll deprive, they'll like, and I've even point blank asked some people this. I'm like, why do they like, it's how I get myself to do things. I go in and I give myself a real mean talking to and I kick myself in the ass and then I go out and get it done. And I'm like, I agree that works, but that doesn't sound very pleasurable to do it that way. I'm just curious for you. Have you seen people this way? And why do you think, because what I've noticed is people don't want to let that go if they're doing that. What are your thoughts on that?
Because pain is a stronger motivator than joy and love. It just really is. It really comes down to it. Fear of pain will motivate you more than the belief of receiving, because we are hardwired negatively. I mean, that's kind of our reptilian brain. That's our animalistic nature. I got to look for threats. I got to avoid being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So I better be hyper aware. When we go into work and we're afraid of what our boss might say, that fear is motivating us to help us stay alive. It is a maladaptive instinct.
So you think it is a mix of conditioning paired with just how our our circuitry is set up?
100%, I believe that. I mean, that might be the default, but also the environment. Let's face it, 95% of the world is angry, frustrated, upset, outraged at something. And so it's amplified by that community. And we have greater, I think we have greater belief in the bad things happening than the good things happening. So abundance is not yet really a motivator, because it's too far outside of our belief system, our cognitive understanding, the wiring of our brains. It's out there, but the people that really excel are the ones that recognize opportunity and abundance and are optimistic more than having pain and pleasure drive you.
Because I'm thinking, pain, like when you're talking about this,
more than having pain drive you, not pleasure. More, right? Yeah.
We want to avoid pain more than we want to experience pleasure.
Because we don't believe we can have pleasure.
So
we believe
here's the question.
There's a fundamental belief. I did a TikTok on this. A fundamental belief that we have in our society. Do you believe that God wants you to suffer? Most people think that we are here to suffer. God cast Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden because they were disobedient. Therefore, Adam must slave by the sweat of his brow.
Interesting to think of it. But you're right. I mean, a lot of people do think life is just suffering is a way of it. And maybe that's true, but I've started thinking it, and now it's like, okay, maybe it's true that suffering is in life, but does that mean I have to participate with the suffering?
Only until you don't want to anymore.
Right? Because I mean, I'm very much at a point in my life where I've had experiences like what you described, where I myself through a hard thing. And I have been able to get myself to do incredibly challenging things. And I talk about the pain cave, why I like the endurance running, because in the pain cave is where you get to know yourself. Because when everything inside of you is screaming, like your physical body is literally begging you to stop. It hurts so bad. And you're trying to find the Zen place of not minding that it hurts, but boy, it hurts. And the body is just begging and pleading, stop, 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 stop. And then fear starts showing up and saying, you're hurting yourself. This is going to cause damage. You've got to stop. Like it gets really scary in your own head sometimes when you're pushing yourself that hard. And I talk about the pain cave because what I've found is on a long run, no one's in there but you and whatever you bring with you.
Yep.
And when you talk yourself out of that pain cave and you encourage yourself, you acknowledge, you see your fear, you acknowledge what fear is saying, and you talk yourself out of it, it's an incredibly positive experience. It's an incredibly pleasurable, even in the midst of all the pain, experience. And I've discovered it is much more effective to be encouraging to myself than it is to be, well, anything other than that, actually. And yet, the ass kicking sometimes is always like, I'm pretty good now at not utilizing that internally, but you know what? It's still just right there, like right next to me. At any moment, I could just pick it up and start using it. It's like this favorite tool that I won't go sell or get rid of. I'm going to leave that tool on the workbench with all the other tools. I'm like, maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. But it's just, it's something I've noticed. Yeah, people don't want to let go of using pain to motivate themselves.
And it's a lack of awareness. It's just not aware. I mean, you mentioned the cave, and immediately what comes to my mind, my favorite movie is Empire Strikes Back. Always
of
has
course,
been.
you got the reference.
Always will be, right? But that's it. Luke goes into the cave and is afraid and asks Yoda, well, what's in there? And he says, only what you take with you. And he goes to take his weapons, and he says, you don't need it. You don't need them. But he disregards the advice of his mentor and goes in, and he's confronted with his deepest fears.
And he has a reason to use those weapons because he brought them.
Because he brought them 100%. The question is what weapons do you have that you're using, right? What are you taking with you into your journey, into your meetings at work, into your relationship, into your business, whatever it is, into your health journey? What are you taking with you? And what weapons are you taking because you're expecting the battle and expecting the fight when maybe it doesn't have to be that way? I mean, look, it worked out okay for Luke because I think he learned something in there. The movie doesn't really go into it, and I wish they did, but I would look at that experience that he had fighting this Darth Vader version of himself and say, well, what is inside of me? And learning to disentangle that. If we can be free from what's inside of us,
behind that scene.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's something my dad always said is, we don't, and I mean, he didn't come up with it, it's just where I learned it. We don't see the world as it is, we see it for as we are. And the thing you dislike the most in other people is actually the thing you dislike the most about yourself. And when he chops off Vader's head and you see the mask and it's himself, and it's like, I think a big part of it is he needed to see that when he's fighting Vader and he's fighting all these things, he's just fighting his own darkness.
Yep.
He's fighting because he is just as capable of becoming Vader as his father was of becoming Vader. He's not immune to it. And that has been a great discovery for me. You mentioned like we all think we all want to be good people, and I agree with that. And we're all the hero of our own story. Thanos was the hero of his story until he wasn't. But it's like sometimes you are the villain. Sometimes you are the asshole. And sometimes it can be really hard for us to see that, that like, no, it's me. It's me.
A person that I've been studying a lot, who I've just absolutely fallen in love with over the last year is Taylor Swift. And it was her song. Awesome. She's amazing. But it was her song Antihero that did it for me. And I gotta pull up the lyrics because I think that this, I am a Swiftie. When I drove with my kids across country, I absolutely 100% listened to her entire discography, but I don't have it all memorized.
Have you watched her concert yet on Disney Plus?
Oh my gosh. We went to the movie theater. I rented it and shared it with my mom. I have yet to watch the Eras Tour Taylor's version on Disney Plus, but absolutely.
I got it. I got the Vision Pro. I was watched it full screen on an airplane ride. It was so cool, man. It's such a great concert, and they recorded it well.
And her lyrics of the song Antihero hit me in a way when I really listened to it, I heard it for the first time. And so I just want to read this because I think this captures maybe where most people end up being stuck. She says here, I have this thing where I get older, but just never wiser. Midnights become my afternoons. When my depression works the graveyard shift, all of the people I've ghosted stand there in the room. Like when we're alone in our head, we regret and we're confronted by our regret, right? I love that. She goes on and says, I should not be left to my own devices. They come with prices and vices. I end up in crisis. Tale as old as time. I wake up screaming from dreaming. One day I'll watch as you're leaving because you got tired of my scheming for the last time. And then the chorus, which I really love. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. At tea time, everybody agrees. And this is the most powerful. When I really heard this, it brought tears to my eyes. I'll stare directly in the sun, but never in the mirror. It must be exhausting always rooting for the anti-hero. Isn't that amazing?
I love that. I mean, I've heard the song, but I've never actually sat and read the lyrics to pick those up. Yeah, those are powerful.
It's so powerful. We all have good inside of us. We all have bad inside of us. If you want to call light and dark, positive, negative, sometimes we're the hero, sometimes we're the villain, sometimes we're the victim. And it's not your fault. It's not something to blame yourself. It's your subconscious conditioning. That's not who you are. It's a belief, it's a story, it's an identity you've held on to. It's not who you are. And you can release it and you can change it. That's power.
It is power. And part of my helping when I was mentioning earlier about trying to release worrying so much about what other people are thinking about me, here's what I'm finding. We'll go a layer deeper, why it's been a struggle for me. because genuinely, for the most part, I'm not too concerned with how a lot of people think about me, but it still gets to me in certain people, certain places. But there's one key area.
Yeah, me too.
It's I get too preoccupied with how do I think of me, my ego. Because I've been having this realization lately. We keep, like you use this one. I immediately, the first thought that came to my mind was Michael Jackson. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways.
Yes.
Because that's what he's talking about, right? The person in the mirror. And then I'm thinking of the song from A Star Is Born. Maybe it's time to let the old ways die. And then he says, it takes a lot to change a man. Hell, it takes a lot to try. Maybe it's time to let the old ways die. And it's like you realize letting the old ways die. And as my own study going in with like Eckhart Tolle and then reading more, studying with Buddhism and realizing this concept of ego at a level that I've never understood before because never asked the questions. I'm learning about the concept of egoic death and realizing that when you go through identity shift, it is both the birthing and arrival of a new identity, but simultaneously sacrificing the old one. And
100%.
That's what growing up is you're letting go of an old identity. And sometimes I find if I get too possessive of a certain identity, a certain sense of self, a certain meanness, I won't let it go. And because I won't let it go, the new thing can't take its place because I won't let it go. And I'm always reinforcing it. And I think so highly of it because I finally, for the majority of my life, I didn't think highly of myself. I thought quite badly about myself. And then I finally found myself at a place in life where I genuinely like the person in the mirror and I like the results I'm getting. And I look around my life and I'm like, I've got everything I want. And I'm not settling. Like I decided what I want and I went and I got it. And of course, what happened? I'm just as a person, I'm like, well, now that I'm here, I got to pass the time. Let's do more, just because I'm here, right? I've got the business really good. Let's make it bigger. I've already helped these people. Let's help more. I've had this vacation. Let's go on another one. Like, not because it matters, but it's just like I'm here. Let's spend my days in ways that bring me peace and joy and happiness. But I realize so much of my ego gets integrated into all these things, and sometimes the next thing I want to go to, it's like, oh, all these things I'm doing, it's really just to serve up my sense of ego. It's just to prop up my identity not to others, to myself. Yeah. And it's really, I'm having a hard time letting that go.
Well, it's an attachment, we have attachments to all kinds of things. It's the attachment to the idea that creates the belief, right? The accepting. And so in terms of identity, things, look, it's the law of polarity. All things have positive and negative sides to it, right? And sometimes we lose track of where we're going and we end up on the wrong side and we go, how in the heck did I get here? That's part of human nature. That's part of growing. That's part of developing. That's part of refinement. As long as that story doesn't become something that chains you to not changing, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes and fumbling around a little bit. But it is hard. It is hard because we live in this 3D world. And we're programmed by our senses and we interact with other people and we bump in and it's messy. But the only way it's ever going to improve. In fact, the song Man in the Mirror I believe that song starts talking about the world outside and all the things,
Yeah, it's talking so much about the world. Yeah. Well, the chorus being, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. No message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make the change.
Make a change. Absolutely.
But it's true, right? Like all the roads end back to our own face.
You can't change another person. People don't resist change. They resist being changed. You can't change someone else. You can't change the system. You can't change the state of the world. Those things are outside of your power. And stepping into that belief makes you feel like a victim. But if you start with the man in the mirror, if you start with the person that you are, changing how you think, what you believe, what you do, you will change results for yourself enough so that when other people look at you, which they have done with you, Chris, is they've go, well, you've changed something. How can I create that change for myself? The only way we're ever going to change the world is to become our best versions of ourselves and to have enough people go, I want some of that. Show me how you did it. And that's why I coach people. That's why you coach people. That's how we change the world.
And you and I both like that Jim Carrey commencement speech that he gave.
Oh my gosh.
And
I love it.
There's a part in there that he talks about, because I've wondered about this very much, about this goal Where are you trying to go? What are you trying to get to? And I did change a lot, but part of it is because that a couple of times, like one time is out of tragedy, but another time it's I looked around and I was like, I've accomplished all my goals and I don't feel any happier than I did before. I'm just me, but with having accomplished my goals. Because I said I'd feel better once I got all these things would make me better. And Jim Carrey says in there, he says, I truly hope everybody gets all the wealth and everything imaginable so that they'll see that just none of it matters. Like you don't need any of it. And I'm really trying, that's where this is leading me to this ego thing. It's just like, I don't want to have it that I'm doing things in the world for the purposes of making me feel more complete, whole, or better. I'm like, I want to just be that way anyway. And then go do these things, but without it needing to be self-serving in any way. Right. And it's a weird thing because I'm seeing as people, we really we get pretty hardwired to being selfish and focused and self-centered. Very much so. You know, even when we're saying we're doing things for others, you find if you just kind of peel back the layers, you find it's actually a self-serving thing.
Always. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. This is self-serving. There's some, 100%. Look, we both have businesses. We both have, this is going to be a great episode, by the way, despite its length, perhaps. But it's self-serving. You know, each one of us has a business that helps our lifestyle move forward. But I think both of us also invest that to increasing our reach, to expand our capacity to even help and serve more. Let's be honest. You're listening to this and your goal is still weight loss and health and to become healthier. It's self-serving to some degree. Maybe you want to attract a different partner. Maybe you want to have a better sex life. Maybe you just want to walk without being exhausted. Maybe you want to like the person in the mirror. That's a good place to start. That's okay. But sooner or later, we have to realize that we're creating this together. And if I don't show up as my best version, I'm not helping the world move forward. And so a motivation can start selfish and it can grow to be more altruistic, but it's all duality. It's all balancing. How do I balance my own needs? Because I still got to eat, still got to put food on the table, but I want to make the world a better place. Right? It's all a balance game.
It is. Well, and I've now started to look at it. We're talking about harkening back to the judgment conversation. I used to think it was bad if a person was self-centered, but now I've just started realizing it's not good nor bad. It just is.
It's where they're at.
It's what humans do. And maybe part of the human experience could involve learning to transcend that and to move beyond the self-serving, or maybe it's not something we're able to do. And maybe it's like you're saying, maybe we find the balance and we find the way to have that harmony of being altruistic while also being self-serving. I don't know. You know, it's a fun journey for me to try to figure it out. And like I said, I'm here, I'm alive. I got to do something to pass the time. So this seems like a worthwhile use of it to figure this out. But it's very much it was a big eye opener for me to realize I was far more self-serving than I thought I was.
Well, I mean, look, I believe in the utopian world of the Federation of Planets from Star Trek, right? I believe in the Federation. I had a dear friend of mine who's an incredible Trekkie who passed away. He always wanted to have something called the Federation Project, some kind of place to come and gather to collaborate and talk and share about ideas that improved and advanced the species forward. But let's be honest, even people involved in the Federation to go and explore and learn and grow, it's still self-serving because it feels good to learn and grow and make the most out of yourself.
It feels good to live, I think is what it is. And we want to live an experience that's pleasurable, right?
100%. 100%. In the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, he says this right in the very opening. He says here, okay, hang on. No, it's in the first chapter, towards the back of it. Come on, Todd. Oh, because I'm still in the introduction. Come on. Let me find it. Here we go. He says this. Maxwell Maltz says this. You grabbing your book too, or?
Yeah, I'm going to grab my copy.
Is it, you got the updated and expanded? Page number 11 in chapter 1.
I'm there.
This paragraph. Today, I am convinced more than ever. Are you on that same one?
Your program for a better living?
Yeah, above that, the paragraph right above that.
Oh,
this study has been
it.
most rewarding.
Yep. Oh, I see.
He says,
yep, I'm there.
Today, I am more convinced than ever that what each of us really wants deep down is more life. Happiness, success, peace of mind, or whatever your own conception of supreme good may be, is experienced in its essence as more life. When we experience expansive emotions of happiness, self-confidence, and success, we enjoy more life. And to the degree that we inhibit our abilities, frustrate our God-given talents, and allow ourselves to suffer anxiety, fear, self-condemnation, and self-hate, we literally choke off the life force available to us and turn our backs on that gift which our Creator has made to us, has made. To the degree that we deny the gift of life, we embrace death.
Wow, I've not reread that paragraph in a long time. That's a good paragraph.
It's powerful, right? And so I
But
agree.
you're right. No, that's it. More life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe that's what we're doing all this for. I can tell you that's why I lost weight. I lost weight because I realized I live here's the thing. I have lived the majority of my life as a big person that also at the same time had terrible self-esteem issues. Just correcting those two things, fixing the self-esteem and losing all the weight and pairing it with getting in shape, my life has more in it than before, because I still get to enjoy all the foods I did before. I still get to eat. I guess I don't anymore because I don't like how it feels. I could, if I wanted, gorge myself to the point of sick feeling full, but I just don't do that. I think I haven't done that. It's been over a year since I've done that. But it has actually enhanced my life because it expanded it. But I felt that way the whole time. It's interesting reading that here, because that really was a key part of my why, is I wanted more experiences in my life, and I was sick and tired of feeling held back by my body. And I honestly feel like that's part of what's going on with my ego, is I feel like I'm constantly stuck trying to serve my ego, where if I could kind of just let that go even more, maybe I could experience more life, more experiences that are hidden from me until I can get through that. Because it seems like every time I let something go, I unlock new life experiences. And who knows, maybe it's just because I'm getting older too. Maybe that's just part of getting older. I don't know yet.
It's interesting. The book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, talks about this. He says, essentially, we live on multiple planes of existence. Bob taught this as well. Like, we're spiritual beings. We have an intellect. We're educated. We live in a physical body. But Science of Getting Rich teaches you can't just live for the body and ignore the spirit and the mind. You can't just live solely for the spirit and neglect the body. It's about integrating all of that together. And I mean, the book is called The Science of Getting Rich, so it's really about money, even though richness is an abundance of experience, a richness of life beyond money. But he says, like, our society is so developed so that you need to have money to express all that you can be. Before we hit record on this podcast, you showed me your in-ear monitors and said, well, they're $300. And I'm like, oh, well, I need to have that money to have that experience so that I can. In fact, my equipment is very similar to yours. I got the same board and we got the same mic. I had the mic first, but you had the board first. But anyways, we've sort of helped each other improve our content over time. We got to have money to do that. Right. So we shouldn't shame money. If you want to, have a healthier lifestyle, if you want to live a long time, you got to take care of your body. It's about developing on all planes of existence at the same time, simultaneously, and just to become the best that you can be. And mindset is the engine that drives every single result in our lives. Everything we've talked about, I don't think we've hardly ever talked about positive thinking in here at all. We've talked about mindset and belief systems from a very broad place.
Actually, I think the only time we really mentioned it was to say that that's not the end all be all. Right.
Not. I mean, I mentioned it, walking myself up the hill, talking to myself positively, but it's so much more than that.
But it wasn't positive. It's not like positive thinking as much as it was just being encouraging, which I guess technically falls under positive thinking. You're talking out loud, et cetera. But still, I agree with you. The mindset thing is everything. And, for anybody listening, it's like, yeah, but Chris, I have hyperthyroidism. I'm like, how do you think you're going to fix that? You're going to use your brain to get yourself to take your ass to the doctor. Like, it's your mindset that makes the real world happen.
Let's acknowledge that, right? Okay, substitute in here your medical condition or challenge that you have, or the part of your body that hurts or whatever. Think about that. Think and with what I'm saying, also imagine the person that's born into a third world country, or is in a war-torn part of the world, or is just struggling with poverty down the street, or has been abused physically, sexually, whatever it is, how you think about what has happened to you determines how you respond to it. It's not what
100%.
happens to you, it's what you do in response that gets you those results. As you change the way that you think, as the change the way that you feel, as you change the way that you believe about yourself and the outside world, you will find yourself doing things differently. And when you change what you do, you change your results. Mindset is not about thinking different, period. Mindset is about thinking different, finding beliefs and behaviors aligned with the results that you have, and persevering in that and modifying, adjusting what you do and how you think based on the response you get from the outside world. It's co-creation at its finest. And it's you taking up the power that you have to do what you can and trusting everything else is going to be okay. We'll figure it out. We could talk more about a
Just do
belief
something.
in higher consciousness, God, spirit, universe, all of that. We've got to have some faith that there are unseen forces out there that will rally to your attention, rally to your aid when you need it, because they're out there. They're out there. Most of the time, people don't do something because they see someone else has achieved something and say, "Well, they're just lucky." Luck is a word that we invented to explain the known effects, the results of other people, while we remain unaware of their causes. That's why we think someone's lucky.
Yeah,
Right?
and so much this has to be come through action and doing things. Like I'm reminded of actually the mentor I'm working with now, and I used to work for him, which so he was a mentor as an employer in the past, and he told me, he's like, if you need or want something, you have to let me know. He's like, I'm not going to be able to give it to you right now. He's like, but I just need to know you want it. So that way when the opportunity comes up, I'm going to know I should consider Chris for this. He's interested. Now, some people, if they don't know that we had that conversation, they might think, oh, Chris just gets lucky. He does all this. And it's like, no, I raised my hand and I spoke up and said, I want that. And I just got patient and waited to let things happen. And you know what? A lot of times I said I want something and it never happened. But you know what? Sometimes I said I wanted something and it did. And it didn't cost me anything to say I wanted something. It cost me nothing other than the disappointment of whether I get it or not. But if you let go of that and just be like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm a complete and whole and happy person regardless of how it plays out, then you're fine. But if you think like, oh, I'll only be a complete, whole, happy person if I get this thing that I want to have, it's like, well, you're probably going to kick the can every time that happens, and you're just going to keep doing that because it works.
Right.
And,
Right.
and you're just going to be miserable, and it's going to be a bummer, when that happens. But we're right at 2 hours. This was a good conversation. Yeah, this is ground we covered. Where can people find you?
Well, people are going to find me online. So I have my own podcast. If you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, I've got my own podcast. It's called Reprogram Your Mind. Go ahead and search that up. You can find that on all the platforms as well. Also, my social media channels, TikTok and Instagram, you're going to find it all over at Todd L. Bauerle. We'll put that in the show notes so you don't have to worry about how to spell it. But if you look for my handle,
it has a particular spelling.
It has, it looks different than it sounds, but at Todd L. Bauerle on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, that's where you can find me. Come along, listen, learn what you can. If there's something that you feel that my help can help you change, that you can get a different result by really focusing on your mindset, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Find my podcast, find my social media. You can find a way to reach out with me as well. Actually, maybe I'll send you my link tree, Chris, and you post
send me your link tree and I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes as well. So we'll do
for anybody listening, if you need a mentor or coach or whatever, like I am a very strong-willed person. And Todd handled me just fine. So I don't know if he felt it was on his end, but I'm telling you, from my end, you handled me just fine. You did great. If anybody's like, because I know there's people out there, you are also a strong-willed, tough-minded person, and you're going to need someone to kind of get through to you. Well, here's someone that can do that. So if you need that one, he'll do a good job at challenging you, which is what we all need to see our blind spots.
It's because I'm direct. It's because I'm direct. We resist being. Look, I will say this. I have learned the greatest tool in reprogramming your mind and changing your mindset and getting. It's not the strategy. It's not the tactics. It's the honesty that's shared between two people. For some reason, we lie to ourselves, and we accept and believe the lies, even when we know we're lying. But when we face someone else and we believe that someone else can help us and we're honest, that exchange opens us up to new potentials. So I'm honest and direct. That's one of my gifts that I have. There's nothing like opening yourself up and being vulnerable. You will change like night and day. You'll be a different person on the other side of it. And it's exciting.
Love it. Well, Todd, thanks for coming on the podcast. Appreciate having you here. You're actually, I don't have many guests, so I'm excited to add this one to the collection of guests on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure. I'm sure we'll do this again in some way, some form or another. So I look forward to that.
That was a great episode. I'm so glad we were able to have Todd on the show. Todd has invited me to come join his podcast as well. I will be sure to announce that and have that broadcast. So if you would like to go go hear me being on his show, you can find a link to that in the show notes. You can also look for the Reprogram Your Mind podcast with Todd Bauerle. You'll find that on all of your podcasting apps. See you next week on the Chris Terrell Podcast.